Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining our next session here, titled Lakehouse to Powerhouse, Reckitt's Enterprise AI Transformation Story. I won't take up any more of your time. I'll just leave it to the presenters to take it from here.
Cool. Thank you very much. We came up with the title using ChatGPT. I'm not sure that's not come as a surprise. So hi, my name is Tewfik. I lead data and analytics at a company called Reckitt. I'll do a short intro right after. And today for this presentation, I've got partner in crime, so Tom Martin from BCG. And BCG have helped us on our AI journey for the past year and a half, and that's what we're gonna, share with you. So just a quick intro. You might not know Reckitt. You might know some of the brands that we sell. You might have some of them at home. Hygiene, health, nutrition. You can see some of the numbers. We've got a pretty reasonable scale, and for a consumer, most consumer good company, AI, data and AI is very critical. Think about demand, supply, think about marketing. We're big marketing machines. So, when generative AI started being a thing a year and a half ago, of course, we, like most of our peers, started thinking about how we can leverage and what we can do with that. Tom?
Thanks, Tewfik. Most of you probably know BCG is the people who make slides. It sometimes shocks you to realize that we actually have people who wake up every day and they write code for a living. So I'm part of that bit of BCG, BCGX and BCG Platinion, and we've had the privilege of helping Tewfik and Reckitt on their enterprise AI transformation journey. We have a lot of engineers, data scientists, technology consultants, and hopefully today's story will be a good example of how we approach AI transformation and how we take end-to-end workflows and work with our partners at Databricks and others to help clients just like Reckitt in their transformation. So looking forward to telling you the story. And indeed, I think it's a really good one. I think Reckitt actually has been very ambitious in what they've tried to do in quite a short space of time. And I think the proof is in the pudding, so looking forward to sharing some of the outcomes today.
Cool. So we have 40 minutes. We're going to talk to you for 30 minutes-ish. There's a demo at the end, and then hopefully we have a good 10 minutes of interaction, Q&A, which is going to be hopefully interesting. So we'll go through that. So we'll talk a little bit quickly about the why and the what, and then hopefully, this is a conference for techies. So we'll do a bit of a deep dive on the platform, on the technical aspects, and then finally, lessons learned, a demo, as I said, and then moving forward, what we're planning to do. So a year and a half ago, keep that in mind. So some of those stuff might be obvious today. They were not necessarily back then. So GenAI started being a thing, and we had to make a decision about what kind of transformation we wanted to go for. The one on the left is what many businesses have done. They've given licenses for ChatGPT Enterprise, Copilot to thousands of their employees. It's cool, but usually you don't see any effect on the P&L. It's very hard to extract productivity gains from doing that. And the one on the right-hand side is what some businesses have done. They've gone after new revenue streams, changing their business model. And at the time, it wasn't our priority. So we were very focused on what you see on the middle. We call that function reinvention. But essentially, it's nothing more than business process automation, business process reengineering, one function at a time. And by function, I mean marketing, supply, R&D, and so on and so forth. We call that program Genesis. And we started with the marketing team. At that time, most of the analysts were saying that the biggest value from GenAI you would find in marketing, you would find in contact centers and software engineering, obviously. So that's what we decided to do, going after marketing, proving it. We designed it as an enterprise program. So if it was successful for marketing, then we would go horizontally, function after function, with a number of horizontal capabilities, the platform, technology platform, obviously, but not only. The ability to do business process mapping, the ability to change management, value realization, and so on and so forth. We were not only looking for efficiency, but effectiveness. You will see some of the numbers. It's not only cheaper for some of the application is actually better. We, obviously pretty obvious, but we didn't want it to be a black box. We designed it with the end users from the very beginning, and that's super important for the last point on the right-hand side, which is change management and value realization. Modularity, optionality in the architecture were very important, and then the one I like is the tacit knowledge. Most of our marketing colleagues, they do what they do with a lot of tacit knowledge, after years of, they know how to actually do the job. And so essentially a lot of what we did was to codify that, to extract that secret sauce. And we actually believe that the way we do marketing is a competitive differentiator. To be a little bit more specific, you have an example of an end-to-end business process at the top of the slide. And of course, to come up with that, you have to do business process mapping, time studies, surveying we surveyed hundreds of our colleagues, asking them essentially, what do you do during your day? And how much time do you spend on X, Y, Z? So think about someone who looks after a brand and they do marketing campaigns and they want to measure the impact, the efficiency, whether they should change the overall strategy. And what came out, I can say part of me is like, yeah, no surprise. Part of me is like, oh my God, is that 80–90% of their time is spent in doing the job of not really their job, like finding dozens of data sources. A lot of them are not in our data platform, combining data together, adding business logic, adding tacit knowledge. You have to do a number of iterations because the data quality is not there. So not very efficient, a lot of frustration, and spending their lives in Excel and PowerPoint and emails and so on and so forth. And so essentially what we've gone after is, you will see it's like workflow automation. It's a proper application. There's a front end. You navigate like if you were using Salesforce. And a lot of the value comes from data engineering, like basic data engineering, ingesting, aggregating data, cleaning the data. And of course, we're using GenAI to produce some natural language commentary, analysis, insights. The end result is a set of content that you can extract into a PowerPoint that goes into a particular series of meetings that the marketeers have. They have regular, like every month, they'll look at the brand performance and so on and so forth. A few numbers in terms of, before we go into what we did specifically in terms of the output. One of the GenAI app is an app that comes up with innovation concepts, new innovation concepts. You have a lot of RAG pipelines. You can imagine we have a ton of information about in-home testing and what consumers are saying on Amazon, rating and reviews and so on. A lot of that. And before GenAI, we actually have a quantitative way of assessing the value, the quality of a new innovation concept. So we just applied the same, A/B testing, and the one that comes from the GenAI app is very often, as good, and sometimes twice as good as the one as the kind of innovation concepts that we used to come up with before. Of course, 70% time saving, that was one of the primary goals. And today we have 300 marketeers. By the end of the year, we should be at nearly 1,000 marketeers that are using the application every day, every week, every month, depending on the application. Let's go into a little bit of the platform, shall we? And before I hand over to Tom, and he's just going to do a little bit of a deep dive, we had to make, so when you go into such an endeavor, it's always good to define a list of principles that you use to make some of the key decisions, yeah? None of it is like groundbreaking, but on the left we borrowed some standard principles from digital native companies. So security by design, extend that to responsible AI by design. Easy to consume, so the platform, we have a platform team which is very efficient. We manage that as a product. And unlike, we actually even have a product manager in the platform team, which might be like a best practice for many of you, but Many companies don't do that. It's a technology platform. Why would I have a product manager? And so the focus is about self-serve, abstracting away, reducing the cognitive load on the product teams. All the stuff that you know of. Quick to change because it's really about pace in that game. And then specific to GenAI, the modularity, yeah, the optionality in terms of the architecture was very important. And what we've heard today on the keynote about the Agentic and a lot of the stuff that were communicated and shared with us today, it's like it's an ever-growing circle. And I'm already thinking about refactoring some of the decisions that we've made. And then finally, reliability at scale being hallucination, but not only from a pure technical standpoint. The thing needs to work at scale. The other macro kind of decision, sorry, too fast, we had to make was, one of those patterns in terms of the macro kind of strategy for the platform. The one on the left was a no-go for us because of what I said about the platform team. So we didn't want 20 product teams to implement 20 times their own answer to the prompt ops challenge or to the challenges that sits behind prompt ops and so on and so forth. So that wasn't going to work for us. The one on the right-hand side, we're not big fans of black box or lock-in, so no go either. And the self-managed and open source, we're not a company with a huge engineering team or a huge engineering culture. We do stuff, but you have to be realistic and pragmatic with the level of engineering complexity you can infuse in your system of work. So we went with a managed Databricks solution, and we were already using Databricks for data and conventional AI. So for us, it was just kind of a natural extension. Let me hand over to Tom.
Thank you, Tewfik. So this is what we built. We built the Trinity AI platform. Let me orient you quickly onto what you're looking at. On the left-hand side, in the blue, is our products. These are the product teams building things for the users, marketing, R&D, supply. And this is a combination of custom-built apps, connectors to kind of off-the-shelf products like ChatGPT, or no low-code builders like Retool. All of them integrate onto this big green box. This is the Trinity AI platform. What's important to note is this green box is shared across the entire organization. And so a key part of our technology strategy was to work out what goes in that box and what doesn't go in that box. So what do we want to centralize and control, and what do we want to federate out to the products? Underneath, you'll see the yellow box, which is the core data platform, as Tewfik mentioned. Reckitt already had a quite extensive data platform across both GCP and Azure, all on Databricks. And then integration into the core systems with finally the LLM providers on the left-hand side. There's a few key points I want to make. The first of which is that this was the end of a process, not the start of a process. So there were lots of decisions that we had to make to decide what goes inside kind of the central service. Do you put agent and workflow orchestration in the middle, in the platform, and serve it to others? Or do you let product teams own that because it's close to the business domain? Do you let RAG pipelines? Do you want standard blueprints and you enforce certain standards on how product teams should use them? Or do you actually let product teams flexibly approach them? What about integration patterns? And what about security patterns? And for each of these decisions, we ended up making trade-offs based on how fast we wanted to go and how much control of the risk and the scale that we actually wanted to achieve. And you'll note that we ended up putting a couple of key things centrally. So central guardrails, central FinOps, central RAG serving, central model control. So we're using Databricks model endpoints to serve all of the LLMs, both embedding and then normal completions. The second point I want to make is that we wanted this to be enterprise ready from day one. What does that actually mean? So many people have built great proof of concepts that look good and you can sell to an executive. But the difference between that and launching it to thousands of people at scale is often all the really boring stuff. security and authentication, role-based access control lists, monitoring and logging, integration with your enterprise team, being able to understand the observability behind these LLM workflows and the applications. Without all of these core services that we did from day one, and Tewfik put great pains to me and the team when we were building this to make sure that we put these quite early on in the roadmap, allowed us the freedom to move really fast in the product world. And it took a lot of cognitive burden away from them. And then maybe the final thing, which I think is worth pointing out, is security and controlling like the scope and the scale of what you're trying to build on the product side is actually really important. One of the nice things about this kind of ecosystem that we built between kind of Retool, some of our custom apps, Databricks, and then integration into the cloud ecosystem on Azure, was that we could do single sign-on all the way from the beginning of the user workflow all the way down into the data products. And once that was integrated, it made security and controls really, really simple. Clearly, this wasn't a big bang, so we started off with some of the kind of really core features, model serving, FinOps, as I've already mentioned, and over time, we incrementally built up all these capabilities and layered them onto the platform. After this morning's keynote, this slide is probably out of date. I'm sure Tewfik is going to be adding some more to the end of this to start experimenting with agents and agent bricks. But trading off what you need to do now and what you need to do later is really important. So you'll notice RAG blueprints, for example. We made a conscious decision to let the product teams design their own kind of RAG blueprints up front because they're quite close to the domain problem. You want the people close to the business to be able to design them quickly. And then it's only once we'd done that a lot and we could recognize the patterns that we moved them into kind of standardized patterns on the Databricks platform itself. Harrison Chase, the CEO of LangChain, said recently that quality of your agent or workflows, AI-driven workflows, is kind of the biggest blocker to getting them into production. So we set up quite a comprehensive hallucination control program, but really this is about making sure that what we are building is of high quality and is reliable at scale for thousands of users, not just the 1 or 2 demos when you put it in front of executives to get the next quarter's budget. To start off with at the top, observability monitoring. So this is both traditional monitoring and logging, but also AI kind of prompt ops and monitoring. We use technologies like LangFuse to help us understand and control what these AI workflows were doing. And then also kind of served guardrails, so using a combination of Azure guardrails and then guardrails in the actual design of the products as well. For the software development lifecycle, this is probably the most important bit. Tewfik already mentioned the tacit knowledge of the marketeers that we put into these workflows. Oftentimes, this is literally just what we put in the prompt. You interview a marketeer, you ask what does 3Ps or CVC mean, or what does this metric mean for this campaign, and you embed that into the prompt. And having good prompt engineering practices, and then scaling them and managing the prompts through the life cycle makes a big difference in how many iterations it takes to actually deliver high quality outcomes. I actually checked before this talk. We ended up using something well over 10,000 runs of our workflows just in the prompt design process when we were actually designing some of these applications, which is, by the way, is about 3.7 gigabytes worth of bandwidth on our workflows. Just to give you a sense of the amount of iteration it took to get to high quality, reliable workflows. Some of these other points, so having citations, these are good practice. Model choice and hyperparameters. Every AI engineer will start with the most expensive, the best quality model they can get their hands on, and then you have to go and sit with them and say, do you really need to use that? Can we use a smaller model? Can we use a faster model? Can we use a cheaper model? And making sure that you understand in your workflows and in your prompt chains, where do you need to interject some of these changes to get to an overall better kind of cost quality envelope is actually really important. So we had a bunch of review sessions and cycles about how we implemented that. And then evals I've already mentioned. Finally, don't forget the people and process. So Reckitt has a strong responsible AI governance process that takes it through kind of the architectural reviews, but then also the through lifecycle reviews, what data is being used, how's it being exposed, and so on. And the combination of that and really, really targeted user training. So we did not just roll these apps out to people and give people access. You were forced to come and sit and do a training session, and only then were you given access to these applications. And that really built user trust because they understood, when am I looking at a discriminative output from an SQL query, and when am I looking at the output of a large language model, which might be non-deterministic in nature. Finally, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention the type of data products that we were actually dealing with. I won't go through this in detail other than to say Reckitt used, I would say, a relatively standard medallion architecture for its structured data needs, but we found a unique challenge on the unstructured data side. I think for the first time in kind of at least Reckitt's experience, we had the concept of users uploading unstructured data into your data platform and then having to manage that. And as a data governance professional, that's really annoying because users could upload anything. And you have to think about the life cycle of that data product. You now own it, you look after it, and you have to then process that into a vector store and embedding, and then surface that back to the application, often in a very, very fast period of time. And so that presented quite a unique challenge. So we ended up having standardized endpoints for doing document in, and then returning an embedding endpoint. And then we built out some chains for basically managing all the volumes of unstructured data that came off the back of that. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a glimpse into the how and what the platform was that we built that enabled this transformation. We're going to touch a bit on kind of the process and some of the operating model. I think a big difference between those who get stuck at proof of concept and those who are on their enterprise journey is whether or not they kind of meet three things. So proof of value, proof of scale, and proof of control. Proof of value is two things. It is, do we know where the value is? So have we got a treasure map of where our automation opportunities are against an understanding of the business and the function? So do we know where we think the value is? And then do we think AI is going to have a good job at going to be able to actually solve that problem? Proof of scale and proof of control are really about having a robust technology strategy. So I've talked to you about all the components of the architecture. Being able to communicate that, set that up, and make sure that the executives understand that we can do this in a controlled way is also critical. And to really kind of bring this to life a little bit, on the next page, I'll talk you through one of the process taxonomies, but all of this took about 4 months. So we did discovery and value pilots, value sizing and estimation, and the technology strategy. And that gave us a package of communication, helped by we're in marketing, the chief marketing officer helped us a lot to tell some good messages, but we packaged that to the executive board that gave them the confidence that we could actually go and get some serious real P&L impact at the end of the day. And then 7 to 9 months later, we got to having 300 users onboarded. I think it was eight apps went live this February with our first wave from when we started around summer last year. Really quickly on the process taxonomy, I like to think about this as really like old-fashioned consulting. So this is, you've got to really, really understand how do people work today. You've got to go and stand next to them, understand all the bits of work that they do, who do they talk to, what documents do they process, where do they get the information from. And it's only when you really understand that you can redesign that in a world of AI and really rethink how to do this process in a way that really works. Especially as I think, there are some interesting stats on here. So many of these processes that marketers are doing go across many different sub-functions. And so you actually have to go to lots of different data sources and lots of different places. And that is a really complicated process if you haven't really understood it.
Cool. So just a word about the operating model. We were very fortunate that when we started this GenAI transformation, the team topology, so the operating model was proven. And I'm just going to say a few words about that. Those of you who've read actually the book Team Topologies from Matthew Skelton, it's really great, I recommend. And the data mesh book. So we followed those kind of best practices. So we have a structure with 3 kind of teams. If I start with the middle one, the product teams, they are, a number of them in the marketing and the supply. So they're aligned to the functional organization. They are delivering the end product, the product that's kind of adding value. So that's one thing, and this is where we scale as well horizontally. The data team, most of the data that are required are in our context. They tend to be reusable and foundational across the enterprise. So we decided to actually break that apart from the product teams and have dedicated domain-centric, so not aligned to function, but aligned to data domains, squads, that look after the data, and they make them, we use a framework called FAIR, findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. So there are many, many frameworks like that. That's the one we've adopted. So that's the second layer of our team topology. And finally, we talk about the platform team, which is all about reducing the cognitive load, making the tasks simpler for the product team so they don't have to bother with infrastructure provisioning, with, Tom was talking about RAG pipelines, providing as a blueprint or prompt ops and so on and so forth. So I would never emphasize too much how important a good team topology is to a transformation like that. That is the difference between a sea of proof of concepts, or purgatory of proof of concept, as the expression goes, and the ability to actually scale across your entire enterprise. So that's for that. The second one, before we get to the demo, so this is what it looks like. As I'm a marketeer, I go onto the landing page, a portal. This is for marketing, and you have a number of applications that are addressing a number of end-to-end business processes. A better way of looking at that is the end-to-end life of a marketeer, from top left, looking at insights, coming up with innovation concepts, testing them, picking them, to then the artworks creation, what gets stuck on the product, to the end, brand performance reporting. So we are really, they're not like point solutions. We're really addressing the end-to-end business process for a particular function. Some of those cut across different functions. If you think about marketing and R&D, of course, it starts with the R&D team, and then it goes to the marketing, which is really interesting to see that coming up as we make progress on that journey. One more point before we go to the demo. So I think the vocabulary, on that is starting to stabilize. I feel, between agentic workflows on the left and autonomous agents on the right. Most of what we've done so far are agentic workflows, as in deterministic workflows. We either do bespoke development, or we use retool for that, and then at every single step, we prompt chain. We use GenAI, conventional AI, and so on and so forth. Versus what is kind of emerging on the right-hand side for us, as Reckitt is concerned. The autonomous agent is still very new, not very kind of reliable. So we are testing, and we're also thinking about the suitability for what kind of business processes, what kind of use case in our organization are suitable for something like that. When you have business processes that need a high level of, they are very consistent and they need a high level of predictability. One of the questions I have is why? Why would I use an autonomous agent where I can do a deterministic, workflow, and the barrier, the complexity to implementing those is actually going down and down. So just a reflection I wanted to share. You're covering the demo?
Thank you, Tewfik. So a bit of a demo. Pre-recorded, sorry, I didn't have the guts to do it live. I want you to imagine you're a marketer. A key part of your job is not just coming up with great campaigns to engage your consumers, but once you've launched those campaigns, you then actually have to see how they're doing and manage and monitor them. This is actually a huge part of a marketer's week, especially more, I would say more, junior, middle level marketers. And what they actually do today is they would, let's say that they've got Google Ads and Meta and TikTok, and they would go to those different portals and they would download data. They would have their own spreadsheets and ways of calculating different metrics. They would harmonize all the calculations. They would run it through their standard process. And so before they've even actually started to analyze, is the campaign any good? They've spent hours and hours and hours just collecting and cleaning data. And then once they've actually come up with some analysis on, should we spend more, should we spend less, what was the performance of this campaign, how should we change our strategy for a particular brand and a particular market, firstly, the information is probably out of date. But then we also have to put it into a big PowerPoint. And so, that's going to take some time. And I iterate that with my manager. And, this is a lengthy and laborious process. And this happens every single week for marketeers across the world, and Reckitt is no exception. Effectively, what this tool does is it massively automates the heavy lifting in the front part of that process. What you're seeing in the background is, I would say, relatively boring, which is why I've been voicing over it. But this is setting up the tool to just make sure that you can pick a good campaign, and now the magic happens. Isn't the timing of the voiceover good? So effectively what it's doing is it's using a whole set of agentic workflows. So it's kicked off about 4 or 5 different workflows, of which they have many sub-workflows. And it's analyzed lots of different parts of this problem. So first of all, it's looked at the performance of a particular campaign. It's gone and run SQL queries on structured data to pull up the real structured information. So all that table data is just like traditional dashboarding. But it's also analyzed it and started to provide some commentary. So we're now starting to look at AI-driven insights into what's happened in this brand compared to previous week's performance, and it's actually giving the marketer a performance synthesis of how that brand or that particular campaign has performed. And let's say then I want to drill into a particular platform, let's say Meta. You saw at the top, and we'll go back to there in a second, what we've done in the background is one of the workflows has just analyzed Meta's platform. So we specifically designed that workflow to have tacit knowledge about how Meta works, about how we use Meta, about why we use Meta, about which products we have, and also information about what the different calculations mean and how they work. And that means you can get a really strong performance summary driven by AI alongside your quantitative data from the data platform that basically just automates the entire process of report generation. And then probably most importantly is that we actually automatically generate a set of actions, so effectively a next best action to assist the marketer in coming up with what they should do next and how that should work, and should we spend more or spend less, or shift distribution, or change the way that this campaign is running on this particular product. Probably the most impactful thing for me of this is the PowerPoint is dead. So the teams now use this tool to have their weekly meeting when they talk about and review their campaigns. And for the first time, they're using traditional quantitative SQL query style dashboarding alongside AI-driven insights to help them move a lot faster. And they've saved hours and hours and hours a week. And frankly, we've taken away a part of the job that they didn't like doing anyway. So now they spend more time actually thinking about the strategy and the brands themselves instead of doing drudge work.
Cool. So what did we learn about scaling AI with Databricks and Retool? As we said before, you have to design for scale from day one. If any of those stuff, when you want to scale, for example, FinOps and cost allocation across different teams to make sure that everybody's got the right incentive to manage the platform and the products in the right way, if you look at that, if you think about that as an afterthought, you can get into trouble. The point I made before about the operating model being super clear about your team topology, roles and responsibilities is fundamental to the ability to scale. The proactive management of the platform constraints. Before going live, we did a performance test, and it was very challenging. We actually even learned about some rate limiting constraints, which were not even in the documentation from Databricks, which was very fun. The reliability and how to deal with hallucination, because we're talking about things which are quite critical in terms of managing the performance of our brands. And then finally, the deliberate architecture management. Today we revisit our architecture pretty much every quarter. And it's okay, and you have to be very comfortable with that. You have to be comfortable with that level of ambiguity. Don't underestimate the size of the business change. So we often talk about people struggling and say, okay, why don't we see more use cases in production? What are the difficulties? The vast majority of the use cases that I see, the problem is actually not technical. It's the fact that the value is not substantial enough. And I think maybe as a community, we don't face enough into that enough. So, you scale it and people are very proud and they say, yeah, we can deliver X amount of value. And you're like, wow, we're a 15 billion business. This is not, reaching the kind of minimum threshold. And when there is value, the ability to follow through from beginning to the end and to make sure that the value is realized is actually very critical. The biggest, where the complexity lied for us was really in terms of change management, stakeholder management, super users, the senior leaders who actually are realizing the value on their side in their budget, and making sure that you're not dropping the ball, on the journey. And then what next? We've already started building products in the R&D space, in finance as well. So we're kind of, scaling horizontally, function after function, and developing the platform as a product, as I said. So which is super important. So you don't over-engineer and you don't under-engineer. Yeah, it's not, it's not a game of building a tech for the tech's sake, but really to do only what the business needs to deliver the value. So I was hoping we would have 10 minutes for Q&A. We have 5. We talk a little bit too much, but 5 is still good nevertheless. So thank you for your attention.